and welcome to the Varietal Show. If you've never been here before, my name is Rory and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel, which is a cozy little corner of the internet for narrative. If you are watching live, you can join in the live chat because what we're going to be doing here is playing a solo tabletop RPG, but not solo. Well, sort of solo. I'm going to be writing along because it's a journaling game. And if you join in the live chat, ever so often I'll call for ideas or prompts, or we'll have choices to make. You can participate in that, and I'll try to integrate as many suggestions as I get. By the end of the stream, we'll have something in writing. Sometimes it's a story, and sometimes it's garbage. But either way, we have fun. If you're not watching live, though, the great benefit you have is down in the description below. You can click on a timestamp that will skip you over whatever you don't care about. For example, I'm going to spend probably about 10 or 15 minutes talking about rules. If you don't care about that, you could skip over them to when I start writing. But nonetheless, let's take a look at what that chat is doing. I see that it is quite busy. I'm a few minutes late today. There's no good reason for it. I just am. Witchery says, stop! Dino time. Indeed, it is a dino time. This is one of the more rule-heavy games that I've encountered. I sort of avoid rule-heavy games, and I don't know how much I'm going to really get into the rules. So if you guys are here for like a tutorial, I don't know that I'm the best one for that. But we'll see what mechanics we engage with. There's about like 4 categories of mechanics we could engage with. Uncle Kitty's having some YouTube problems. I am sorry to hear that, Uncle Kitty. If it's not the weather and it's not your computer, it's your YouTube. The world is trying to keep you away from the things you enjoy. Tammy is saying that their arm is still sore. They had a bit of an injury. But they couldn't miss their stream. Well, I hope you don't need to use the arm to stream. I hope there's not like a generator you have to like pump to keep the internet on or something. Hopefully you can just sit back and let it rest. And Witchery is being made to wait outside rather than relaxing on their computer. Well, I'm not sure who's forcing that, but we can certainly should tell them that. Unless it's the cats, in which case there's no point. And Big Drew's here. It's been a little while since I've seen you, Big Drew. I hope you're doing well. Uncle Kitty says the troubles was the antivirus. Yeah, that can create troubles. You can join live chat and distract Rory. Indeed. Indeed. It's like those streams where you pay money to wake people up, but instead you're not paying me money and you're just, I'm already awake. So it's not like those streams at all. And for other good analogies like that, let's get into the writing. Way to sell your wares. This part of the show is called litgames. It stands for literature games, which is my kind of catch-all term for the 10,000 names that we have for basically indie solo tabletop RPGs. Journaling games, solo journaling games, lyric games, solo tabletop RPGs. There's like 50 names of them. Most of our stuff comes from itch.io, which is kind of the hub for all these indie games. And if you're not watching this live, then there should be, unless I've fallen down on the job, there should be a pinned comment down below where to the link where you could buy this game if it interests you. So, am I a little off center? Am I on center? Maybe a little off center. Let's go a little more. I think I might have ruined it. Okay, whatever. We are going to play a game called Titan Mesozoic. Hopefully that's how that's pronounced, because it is a real word. And I didn't think to look it up ahead of time, and I haven't heard it in a long time. I have heard it pronounced before, though. Jumpstore, who is here, I didn't say hello to, says, and here I thought it was called Lit Games because all the games are lit. Are all the games lit, though? Sometimes the games, what we learn, aren't that great. I mean, I never really say anything negative in the moment, but I think we all know. Okay, so let's give you, there's a lot to cover with this game. I don't really know where I'm going to cut off the explanation, but I'm going to kind of give you an impression of the game. And then we're going to build a character. And then, honestly, that might be the whole game. We'll see how it goes. But a really common thing for indie tabletop RPGs is they put their influences in, and I don't usually read them, but because this is a bit of an odd concept, I thought I would read out their influences here because it does something to explain how the game feels, what the world is like in the game. It was inspired by Ark Survival Evolved, which is an online, I think it's an MMORPG. I've never actually played it, but I've seen it played. It's not really my thing. But it's about being around dinosaurs and survival. I would say it definitely has a lot in common with Ark. The other thing that comes up a lot, but the real core of this influence comes in a later part of the game that we aren't going to get to, which is Horizon Zero Dawn. I would say that its sort of story, if you want to call it that, seems to be somewhat inspired by that. Tartakovsky's Primal, Robin Hobb's A Realm of the Elderlings, which I don't know, and Colossal, a solo RPG adventure, which I don't know. So the way it works is the premise is you are dropped into a dome with dinosaurs and aliens by some sort of space pod. And then you have to go around collecting stuff and making friends and stuff like that and crafting things to survive, including shelter and so on. Witchery says we should play Traveler. The character creation is a game. Well, that's an interesting one. I'll try and check it out if I don't immediately forget about it. So what you need is a deck of cards with the jokers removed. Regular playing cards otherwise. And at least one dice. I do think it's a little easier if you bring the 2 D6 dice. The gist of the game is there's 4 aspects of the game, if you will. There's combat, which includes, I believe, they include under that taming, like you can tame beasts. There's combat, there's crafting, there's exploration, and I'm forgetting the 4th one. I'll look it up in a minute. Each of those has a different sort of way of working the mechanics of this, but the gist of it is you draw cards based on the suit and the number, sometimes one or the other, sometimes both. You will get prompts from a list. Those prompts are kind of value neutral. And what you then do is you roll a d6 dice, or a d6 dice, and depending on the result, it tells you whether that event that you rolled for a card is a good or a bad thing. So, for example, you might roll a card where it's like somebody wants to experiment on you with some herbs. You're like, okay. And then you roll the d6 dice, and if you get a result that says that's good, maybe you get like a buff or something like that, or you can see clearer, or it clears up your skin, I don't know, whatever, heals you. But if it's bad, maybe now you're sick all day or something. It's a writing game at its core, so it's up to us a little bit what happens. Traveler is a game. Yeah. I have considered playing games on here. Some of the more literary style games, but I don't know. I don't know if that's my scene. To be clear, I play a lot of games. I'm currently playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and then after that I'm going to play Dragon's Dogma 2, and after that I'll probably go back to Helldivers 2 and until Elden Ring's DLC comes out. So I definitely play games. And Stardew has its expansion out and so on. But I just don't know if I have anything entertaining to offer in playing a game. That's the thing. I don't know if I have a vision as a streamer of gaming, but I do know how to write. Zombie Wolf says, why are aliens with dinosaurs? We're the alien, as far as I can tell. We're in an area where Tammy, I do have tea actually. It's still steeping though. It's in the fun cup that Zombie Wolf, I believe, is the one who's frustrated they can't get. Anyways, I forget what I was talking about. Who cares? It's probably not important. If I can't remember. Okay, explore, craft, build, rest. That's what I forgot. Rest. So it tells you right here, you explore. To explore, you draw cards, interpret prompts, fight dinosaurs, and tame them. That's the main thing we're going to be doing. Craft, you roll dice and create useful items and equipment, but we need supplies to do that, which we get from exploration. Build is roll dice and create your character's home base, which has a tier system. And then rest, spend time recuperating from your adventures. And the way it works is this. Every turn is a patch of time, and it's up to us kind of how long that is. It can be a day. It can be a week. I think a week, it probably makes the most sense for how it works. Or it can be like a month. And within that patch of time, you get 4, let's call it tokens. Look at me, I'm actually trying to explain the game. Everyone's yawning. They're like, when do I get to screw with Rory's writing? But I'm going to give it a shot, because I think the mechanics of this game are cool. Hello, Genera. No, I'm explaining a more mechanics-heavy thing, so you didn't miss anything. Let's imagine that each round you get 4 tokens. You don't actually need tokens. I'm visualizing it. Each of these tokens can be put with any of these activities. So, like, you can choose to explore twice in that whatever time frame, let's say a week, and build twice. Or you can choose to explore 3 times and rest once or whatever. You can choose to do one of each the whole time. So the point is each round you get basically 4 actions, if you want to think of it in board game terms. You get 4 actions, and you can spend them on any of these things. Each of those has their own little subsystem of mechanics, which involves having a dice and a deck of cards. And that is probably all I'm going to say right now. As we go along, you'll see the mechanics. Some of them are pretty cool. Some of them I found I don't think I understand. This rule set is about 120 pages, which is quite a bit more than usual. I did read the entire book, I will say, but I don't know that I absorbed it all. So I apologize if you created the game and I messed it up. You seem like a nice person based on the writing and the comment replies you had on your page. What tea am I drinking tonight? I am still drinking Earl Grey because I am a basic Picard-loving SOB. Picard is probably my captain. I guess, honestly, when I was a kid, I watched a lot of Voyager. I watched them all, but as a kid, I really watched Voyager, but Voyager was made for kids. It does not age well at all. Some of the characters are good, and some of the storylines still work, but a lot of it is really goofy. Honestly, as I got older, Deep Space Nine, and, of course, Next Generation is the best of Star Trek. Jumpstore says, Rory, don't take such long pauses between suggestive sentences if you don't want me to ad-lib. Ad-lib away. I can't hear you. Zombie Wolf says, are you sure you want to drink caffeine so late in the evening? You know, I process caffeine super well. I can, drink a coffee at 8 p.m. and then go to bed at midnight. Yeah, I agree with that, Witchery. Okay, before I get distracted, I'm not going to go into all the world building stuff in this game. Not because it's not interesting, but because I want to leave us some room to breathe with these mechanics and build our own world out. And also because I don't want to, give the whole game away. But we got to create a character. So that's kind of the end of me talking about the rules. Let's go through the character creator, which I skimmed, so I have the gist of it, but here we go. Oh, I just realized I never showed you this thing. I've had litgame up the whole time, sorry. Let me show you the cover of this. There you go. Okay. So the first thing it does is it gives us a table where we roll 2d6 and add them together rather than use them as 2 numbers like in a d66 chart. 2d6 and add them together, and then we can pick an either masculine or a feminine name. So I'm going to roll the dice, but you folks out there in chat, tell me if we should have a masc or fem name. I don't really care. It's 10. So we have a choice between Theron or Taron and Estera. Zombie Wolf says, I'm pretty sure the creator manual also got skimmed when humans were formed. Tammy says, you're making me dizzy, Rory. Talking too quick? Oh, scanning up and down the page. That's the kind of excitement you can expect here. Like a roller coaster. Mask name, okay. Theron. So it has a character sheet. I'll show you it because I don't want to misrepresent the game. It's a good character sheet. It is not a form-fillable character sheet. So I made a rough approximation of it in Google Docs here, which is rough. Nobody denies that. Oh, we got another vote for Fem. I didn't see that one. And then another vote for Estera. Okay, Estera it is. Sorry, Zombie Wolf. Supplies is just a number when we get them. Items are like specific things you pick up. Appearance and personality we're going to work out in a minute. And then there's a little weapons chart here. Why don't I just use the actual sheet? There's armor and armor points, and there's weapons and how much harm they do and what their durability is, and yada, 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 yada. Okay. Our appearance. So we will roll 1d6 to determine which side we need to roll a d6 on. And that's why I said 2 will help. So we're rolling on the left side. And I'm rolling another dice here. Unless you guys see something there on the left side that you really want. I'll read them out for you. Long scar across the back. Permanent missing patch of hair. Missing finger. Missing toe. Several teeth missing or tattooed. I will give you guys, I don't know, like 30 seconds. If you have a vote here for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 on this list, let me know. We rolled a 1 to 3, so it's a flaw. Although I don't think a tattoo's a flaw. I guess it's just another feature. Witchery says, somehow she's surprised in a oh, our water heater is busted. Oh, who doesn't know the pain of the water heater? That's a serious one. Hopefully it was contained well enough. Hopefully you have a good drain near it. Presuming that's how it failed. Jump Store is looking for multicolored eyes. I'll give it a second, see if anything else comes up. I guess there's nothing that really stops us from putting multiple features in. Scar across the back. Multicolor eyes, scar across the back. Maybe you guys can think about why we have a scar across our back. Multicolored eyes, what are the color of those eyes? I mean, one's got to be green, right? Green is a great color for eyes. Green and what? And scar across back. Witchery says it's outside. This is a foreign concept to me in Canada. If it was outside, it would have floated away by now here. Ooh, silvery. I like that, Tammy. That's a cool idea. A green and silver eyes. Okay. Then we get to our personality, which is a D6. So our options are uncomplicated, cowardly, intuitive, and well-mannered, focused, emotionally aware, risk-taker, competent and athletic, gregarious, self-centered, fearless and frugal, analytical, complacent, thoughtful, and sympathetic, extroverted, instinctive, formal, envious, escapist, and self-confident. I don't think anybody here knows how to be self-confident, not to speak for you. But I think we're all introverts. Why Would we be in parasocial relationships if we weren't? But maybe I'm wrong. A 5. We are extroverted, instinctive, and formal. Jump Stars, can we do abnormal colors? We can. Gradient pink and gold, like the dawn sky. Gradient pink to gold. Sure. Why not? We'll have gradient pink to gold on one side, and then silver on the other. Genera says, I didn't come here to be called out like this. We know who we are. We don't need to hide. Zombie Wolf says, how dare you, Rory? I know I've got all the risk. Can any of us write an extrovert? What happened to my TV? Give me a second. It's ruining my illusions. Okay, well, let's take the challenge on of writing a thing we are not. I'm going to immediately forget that this is a feature. Landing location. Okay, so we roll a d6 to determine the side. I just lost a dice. It's okay, my cat will find it. He's a little dice thief. Find them around. Even when we put them in bags and stuff, so we must dig them out. Okay, we're on the right side. So we can be... we could have landed... So we landed in a pod, to remind you. We can land in an abandoned nest, suspended from huge tree branches in an open field, in a river, on top of a plateau, edge of a forest. Jumpstore says probably something like spunky with a zest for life. Genera says only among others of my kind am I extroverted. I have the capacity to be quite gregarious with strangers. I just then need to hide in a room for a dark room for an entire day. Dice Goblin Cat, yeah. Okay. I don't know if anybody has any preferences here. I kind of like the idea of landing in a river because I like water. But if somebody wants to do something different. Oh, yeah, good point. Jurassic Park Classic, number 2 there. From Witchery. Suspended from huge tree branches. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Whoops. Zombie Wolf says, I guess they could be like a happy optimist who hasn't really had this joy sucked out of them yet. Yeah, I don't think this is necessarily a negative game, I should say. I think it's more just adventurous. Like I said, it reminds me a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn. Which is a game that I'm mixed on. But I know is, I can recognize as a good game. Witcher says could be over a river. It is going to be over a river. That's exactly what I thought. Uncle Kitty, what do you blame your jobs for? Sorry if I've lost the thread. Your character wakes up inside of a strange alien pod that fell from space and landed on the Titan. They have no equipment, there are no supplies inside, no instructions, only a button that will open the front face of the pod. They don't know why they're here, who or what sent them, or who they themselves really are. And then you get this very cute drawing of a hairy chest done in, I'm going to assume, paint, with a crystal jammed in our chest. I don't think this is a mechanic I'm going to work too much with, But it says an even bigger mystery may be the metallic device with a crystalline cover that has been implanted into your chest. It doesn't seem to function right now, but maybe as they venture further into the Titan, they can uncover its purpose. And there is a sort of end game, which I don't think I've ever really seen in a solo tabletop RPG. There's an end game when you level up enough, you can go and check out the Titan. I haven't read through it because I may yet play this whole game on my own. Oh, Uncle Kitty says my lack of filter. Well, I think also being a writer, you learn, like, when you're writing, your best interest is to sort of just the shortest path between your thoughts and the paper. And sometimes I find it's hard to adjust to the world where they want you to filter that. Just a shocking drawing. A little bit, yeah. It's one you don't want to look at too briefly, because you might get different impressions. Anyways, strangely enough, part of their mind remembers certain skills, such as self-defense, carpentry, hunting, and foraging, and it goes on. We don't need to read it all. Okay. This is the rules, but I don't need to go to the rules per se. What we need to do is... If I thought ahead, I would have put the... I would have put the page I'm looking for in. But hey. You don't come here because it's quality. I don't know what that means. Right. Okay. So we have basically 4 things we can do in a span of time. I don't know if we'll get through all 4, especially since it took 30 minutes to set the game up. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to deal with each of these one at a time. Our options are to explore, craft, rest, and now I've forgotten the other thing. But it doesn't really matter because the only thing we can do right now, because we don't have a shelter, we don't have any supplies, which we need for crafting, the only thing we can do is explore. So the way that you explore is you draw a card for each, basically, of the 4 you're spending on it. But since I don't know what our next thing is going to be, I'm just going to draw 1 card for right now. And the card I've drawn is a 2 of spades. And then I go to the exploration prompts. Oh, it's just a dog barking. And I look for the spades. The spades. There we are. 2, you encounter an Awoken tribe member, which is the sort of native species of the planet. There's a whole description of them up there. Which Rory says... Witchery says, Rory stops negging yourself. Well, how else am I ever going to get, a piece of this? Of myself. Gennaro says it's the best quality. Yeah, that's right, Jumpstore. No extrovert understands the meaning of rest. I didn't really go into the tribe members, but it describes 4 tribes, and there's a whole, relationship system you can engage with. I understand it the least. So depending on how dependent this is on me knowing that, I might skip it and pull a different card. You encounter an Awoken, however it's pronounced, tribe member while out exploring, and they seem to need your help with something. Are they trying to find something they've lost, or is it something more serious, like an injured companion? Yeah, it's a little early for that. I'm going to draw a different card. It's a 10 of clubs. I want to engage with the other systems instead. We don't even really have a way to help anybody anyways. Witchery says that was overly saucy. For some reason that made me think of spaghetti. 10. you discover a massive tree, completely different from others around you. A doorway has been carved into it, and the inside has been almost completely hollowed out. Who built this place and why? If it's unoccupied, you decide to search, and then you may roll on the item table and see what can be found here. Okay, first and foremost, though, we roll a d6, and we see if this is going to be a good thing. Okay. I think that's a good thing. And then we also can roll on the item table, which I've got to remember if that's up or down. Let's try this. Supplies. Probably not gonna. If your character draws a card that prompts them to roll for an item, you may roll on the table below to discover what they've found. Not all items may have mechanical benefits. Okay. Rolling. I rolled a 5, so I think we're not getting anything mechanically beneficial. We find a key, an old tome, medicine, a small tame creature. Ooh, a pet. A fairy house. Good point, Witchery. Helpful gadget. I don't know what the helpful gadget is. Vial of Infinium? Oh, yeah. I know. Vial of Infinium. Let's see which one we get. Medicine. We get medicine. Okay, so I'm going to put that in our character sheet. I'm sorry to hear your arm is hurting so much, Tammy. I hope you feel better. Why don't we say the little critter is there too, and you guys tell me what that small tame creature is. Keeping in mind this is sort of a dinosauric world. It's not literally real dinosaurs all the time, though, so it could be whatever. Yeah, a result of 1 to 3 makes that card a positive encounter. Okay, so yeah, I think our first prompt then is we found a little house. We'll introduce our character. We'll find a little house in a hollowed out tree. And in it, we'll find some medicine. And a little familiar, I suppose. Jumpstore says, figure we didn't get a pet. We get whatever we want. It's a solo game. I don't think I'm going to do anything with the encounter, so I'm taking this off my... Oh, that's right. They make me do it in an awkward way. Come on, you going to let me? Oh, tables. I've just made it worse. Who cares? Let's go to the next page. It was the shutter of my pod striking something. I like how it is pretty much the Helldiver pod. Oh, sugar gliders are adorable. I knew someone who used to have a sugar glider. Uncle Kitty says anteater. That's also very cute. Anteaters are slow. Indian giant squirrel. Ooh, is that the multicolored ones? It was the shutter of my pod striking something. Or maybe I'm a manga. Momo reminds me of, I was watching a video on Uncle Iroh today for those people who watch Avatar, which is a phenomenally well-written show. Not the live one that they're doing on Netflix, which it's not as bad as some people have said, but it certainly misses the point enough that I don't see any reason to recommend it. But yeah, the both Avatar series. I know the second one wasn't as well liked, but I liked it. I liked Korra. It was the shudder of my pods striking something and swinging that woke me. My fingers were still numb and cold, almost stiff. The interior was drenched in dew like a thawing cave of ice. Gennaro says it doesn't feel insulting like the movie that does not exist. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a real shame how that went. Yeah, I'm with you, Jumpstore, but I don't know. Sometimes they adapt things, and like I see that they had a different swing they wanted to take on it, and even if I don't like it as much, I kind of get why it might have been justified. But that's not what's happening here, so I don't know. Yeah. Like, I mean, I kind of respect it more if they made changes. I know that's more controversial, but like the fact that, for example, you know, the live adaptation of Beauty and the Beast, while I don't like it anywhere near as much as the animated one, it does expand on things and puts a bit of a different twist on things. So like, I feel like it earns its place in the canon as just being a more of a variation that maybe worked a little better in live action than the simplicity of a cartoon, but there's nothing about Avatar that is better outside of its cartoon format that I've seen so far anyways. I always like that song and I play it twice. The interior was drenched in dew like a thawing cave of ice. I blinked and saw my face in the foggy window of this pod. It was slender and soft-featured. My lips were a bit thin, and my eyes were a strange that I do not recall seeing with others. One was a soft silver that feathered to blue at the edges. The other was a gold and pink. Iridescent as a setting sun. I was a stranger to this face. GS says, sorry to be repetitive, but the French Beauty and the Beast live action made around the same time was magical. I've not seen it. Sounds intriguing. Jump Store says, I'd wear a corset to see what it feels like. I've worn a corset. They're uncomfortable, but like they're made for standing. Honestly, they remind me of like just a slightly more aggressive version of a three-piece suit. Zombie Wolf says, everyone seemed to like the One Piece live action, but I'm a rabid fan of the anime. And I have less than kind words to say about the Netflix show. I do think that, to some extent, adaptations are probably not for fans, which is something that I try to keep in mind. Because, like, if I'm a fan of a property, I probably don't need it made again in a different way, like it already worked for me. I think they're more trying to collect different people. And to the credit of the Avatar show on Netflix, it seems to be doing that. Oh, Tammy says, Beauty and the Beast is my favorite all-time story. It is a wonderful story. I even got a forever rose that never dies from Ukraine. That's beautiful. I was a stranger to this face and my own thoughts. I was as a babe, yet somehow knew much. I reached and opened the door out into I'm going to shorten this up a bit. Witchery says they aren't made for standing. I just meant when I sat down, that's when I felt them. Standing was the only time it was comfortable. Witchery says they need to fit. Well, I mean, I didn't buy it like custom. So it was just a costume and a stage play I was doing. Overwhelming world of wild noise. The pod was stuck on a high branch over a frothing white river in a land of endless green under endless blue. The air was thick with pollen and mist, but had none of the metallic taste I remembered. In it. The riverbed was beset by a herd of feathered bipeds. So not a man. There's a philosophy joke for you. It's a deep cut inside joke. Does anyone know the reference featherless bipeds? You know a channel, and I can't think of the name, but I'm sure someone else can. She originally lived in New York, but I think she lives in London now. It's a channel of a lady who sews Victorian era, I believe, clothing, and like tries Victorian era stuff, including makeup and hair and stuff. It's a really interesting channel. The riverbed was beset by a herd of feathered bipeds with stout arms that were sprung. No, too many weths. Stout arms tucked against their bodies. Jumpstore says, sorry, it's long. Zombie Wolves, maybe I'm too young for that reference. You're definitely not too young for that reference. No one in this is too young for that reference. That reference is 2,200 years old. So, and the name is slipping me at the moment, but I think it starts with an A. During the time of Plato specifically, Plato had a school. No, Aristotle, I think it was. Those other, it's one of the two. Aristotle's a little bit later, but the it makes sense to me that it would be Aristotle for the joke they make, because Aristotle was obsessed with giving definitions to things, and the Greeks at the time, or I guess specifically the Athenians, were annoyed by these kind of pompous know-it-alls that philosophers could be. And so there's a play that still exists to this day that you can find around that was a part of my reading in my first year of philosophy, which was brilliant too, because it shows that from the beginning people were annoyed with philosophers, and probably rightfully so, where I think it was Aristotle had defined man as a featherless biped. And so what this play does, among other things, which is mostly a play of fart jokes, by the way, is something that they later apparently were actually doing, which was they plucked the feathers off of chickens and threw them over the wall. I know, poor chickens. Threw them over the wall. To tell Plato that they had some students for his class. Or Aristotle, or whoever it was. And I feel bad for the chickens, but also, it's a good joke. It's a good joke. The riverbed was beset by a herd of feathered bipeds with stout arms tucked against their body. They snaped. Snaped? That's a very different thing. Snape. Severus Snape. Wow. That's like a 15-year flashback. They snapped at the water. Yeah, Diogenes didn't care for that one, as I recall. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if the play took it from Diogenes or whether it's an account of Diogenes. But Diogenes was rocks. I like Diogenes. Zombie Wolf says, I'm surprised to see that fart jokes go that far. Fart jokes are the earliest jokes we have, man. It's the thing we've always found funny, apparently. I'm not opposed to them, but it's not like my favorite thing. But I will say, historically, there's always been fart jokes. Yeah, the play is surprisingly crude. It's like an Adam Sandler movie, honestly. It's wild to read in like this old-timey structure and so on, but no, it's very crude. They snapped at the water with their elongated jaws strung and carved Uncle Kitty says a lot of Greek plays were very vulgar. A lot of early plays really were. In general, like medieval plays were like that as well. A lot of our concepts of like how royalty acts and what's proper behavior and stuff is extremely recent. This is one that I imagine a lot of people know, and I think I have mentioned before. I only recently quite found out about this. The whole reason why there's like codes of honor for knights and codes of honor for samurais, which are just basically knights, is because they were so dishonorable that they were having like peasant rebellions against these monsters that had no war to go to, but the king didn't want to get rid of. So like, you know, our concept of the honorable knight. No. That was like almost an invented concept entirely. I'm sure some became more honorable with the codes of honor, but also our concept of knights as being like heroism, as I've mentioned before, they're more like local government mixed with like the police. A lot of them were basically trust fund kids, and yeah, like just a lot of your concepts about this stuff is unfortunately the truth is that most of society has been looked relatively similar in the broad strokes. Those are... I realized these were the scaly, the leathered and feathered. Okay, I'm not saying that. These were the feathered dinosaurs. I thought long extinct. But they're on a horse, Rory. The people like that. That's true. Also, we like the fantasy of being like a hero and whatever. It's fun. Not everything needs to be super accurate to be fun. But the problem is it leaks back into history. And then people are like, we need to get back to old ways when it wasn't a bunch of bureaucrats and warrior culture. And, you know, as if it ever wasn't a bunch of bureaucrats. It always was. What do you think Rome was? What do you think Greece was? What do you think the entirety of English history and French history? And I mean, there are exception cultures, of course, but like the vast majority of the history of the world that they're referencing is not at all that different than now. It's a bunch of rich people in positions of power making detached decisions for the peasantry. Tammy says, I'm having some chunky, spicy sirloin burger soup. What's giving it the spice? Witchery says King Arthur is an early medieval Superman. Now I want an early medieval Superman. That must exist. There's so many versions of Superman stories. The only one I've read beginning to end is the one where basically Superman gets cancer. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but something about him and the sun. I forget what the actual premise of it is, but it's a short graphic novel. It was pretty good. You know, it was okay. I am reading the Thor one done right now. It's just called Thor. There's like 3 different Thors going on right now, but or probably more than that, honestly. But it's just the mainline one, which is about sort of Thor becoming the All-Father, as far as I can tell, anyways. Zombie Wolf says, trust me, I know what ancient Rome was. So much mind-numbing politics. Yeah, and then they reference it as if it was a time of heroes, and like, you're just picking up on 2 millennia old war propaganda. I realized these were the feathered dinosaurs I thought long extinct. The land writhed and rustled with life like this. Where was I? Nowhere I could recognize. Oh, All-Star Superman. Yeah, that's what it's called, Witchery. You're correct. Thanks for Googling. I crawled down the tree from where my pod had crashed and found the base of it hollowed out. It was a wide enough tree. Is it? I'm digging into some very old memories here, but is it Catcher in the Rye where he lives in a tree trunk? Or is that something else? Something I read in high school had something like this, where they made a home in the trunk of a tree. And I know, 80% of the world hates Catcher in the Rye. I didn't hate it, but I know people find Holden whiny and have problems with the ethos of a 100-year-old book, but I'm not really worried about that. I'm just trying to remember if that's where I'm pulling this memory of a carved out... It's not a fantasy story that I'm remembering. Witchery says, Luthor overcharged Superman with so much solar power that his body couldn't absorb it all, causing him to become extremely more powerful, but also have a cancer-like disease. Yeah, it's very... It's still ultimately Superman. You know, it's still kind of light, I guess is what I would say. But as far as Superman goes, it preserves that lightness, which isn't my favorite part. Superman's not really my favorite character at all, but it adds enough nuance and interest because he's, yeah, you know, it's like a god figure. GS says, I don't know why, but your creatures are bringing Beetlejuice creature to mind with those long jaws. That's true, they do. Apparently they're making another Beetlejuice for a reason. Tammy says, just a question. Has anyone seen City of Lies about B.I.G., like Notorious B.I.G.? Gonna watch it after the live stream tonight. I might have. I watched a couple of videos in a row, a couple of movies in a row about the West Coast, East Coast rap scenes in the 90s, and I don't remember which one's which. I crawled down a tree. I guess hip-hop, not rap. Exactly. Stars Johnny Depp? Okay, no, I'm thinking of something else. Is Johnny Depp in a movie about Notorious B.I.G.? Does he play him? No, I know he doesn't play him, but that would be very funny. Funny in a bad way. I crawled down the tree from my pod, where my pod had crashed and found it. It was wide enough that it could make a decent shelter. But it seemed like it was occupied. Inside, the ground he plays a detective. Oh, is it about his murder then? Oh. It just seems weird to make a white guy the star of Biggie's biopic. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, that's not me making any commentary on the movie, though. Inside, the ground was smooth and stamped. And the ground was dirt, but smooth and polished by the pacing, by the many passes of someone's feet. Your comment there, Witchery, reminds me of oh, what was it called? Tropic Thunder? But smooth and polished by the many passes of someone's feet. Still, cobwebs were strung between the hand-hollowed walls and a pile of paraphernalia. Paraphernalia? Oh my god, I got it first try. Paraphernalia in the corner. No, I don't mean hallowed. Uncle Kitty says most of the original cast will be returning for the new Beetlejuice. Yeah, which gives me some confidence. Like, I will be honest, I'm like most of the world, pretty skeptical about sequels to things. However, I have to acknowledge that Blade Runner 2049 is one of the best movies I've ever seen. And I was extremely cynical going into it. And then it blew my mind. Now, admittedly, they had Denis Villeneuve, who's currently doing Dune, which is also quite good. I don't think Denis really done a bad movie, to be honest. But I've been wrong. So I guess I'll see. You know, maybe they have something there, right? Sometimes it is worth it. For me, Blade Runner 2049 might have even been better than the original, and I love the original. Not every cut of it, but the final cut, the only one that's an actual director's cut. The director's cut isn't a director's cut, by the way, which is wild. But it's a very good movie. So it's possible. Do I think Beetlejuice 2 will be that? No, but I'll see. We'll see what it is. A pile of paraphernalia in the corner. Maybe hand-tooled. Still, cobwebs are strung between the hand-tooled walls and a pile of paraphernalia in the corner. No one could have been here for at least a month. I felt guilty. I really like that sentence. I had trepidation, but my own needs overrode it. Witcher says the nostalgia bait is so big that it's not going to have any nostalgia bait in 20 years. Oh, they'll just keep recycling it. You know, the thing that I find weird, though, I've said this on the stream before, is when people, like, talk about, people talk about, you know, why aren't the writers doing anything new? They're all out of ideas or whatever. As if writers ever made a decision about what movies get made. I wish that writers could just go cold call studios with their original ideas and get anywhere, but that's not how it works. For the most part, Hollywood and media like that is some guy with money sees a trend and then like hires little mercenaries basically to write his concept. And it's been that way for a long time, but at some point they picked up on the fact that risk wasn't worth it. Witcher says it's the studio. Yeah, it is the studio. Just like when the strike was going on and people were like, these puffed up, overpaid writers. No, they're not. You probably make more than the average Hollywood writer. You're thinking of the studio owners is who you're thinking of, and the 1% of actors who actually make a lot of money. Not most of them. Interpretation, but my own needs are overrode it. Okay, I had trepidation. No one could have been here for at least a month. Oh, it took me a minute to remember what this is about. I saw amongst the items a tincture of healing balm. I had trepidation at thieving from an unknown abode, but my own needs overrode that. I had nothing in this wild and dangerous new world. Well, Witchery, what I will say is most of the time he's playing Hunter is what he's doing. And I remember, I think it was, what's his name? The one who played in Where Buffalo Roams. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He's iconic. Said that Hunter really made an impression. Although I'm going to do a rare thing. I am going to ask that we don't debate the trial here, please. I realize that it was a hot button topic, but let's stick with the game. Besides, we have another card to draw. All right. So, 9 is spades. 9 of spades. I'm going to keep us exploring. That's okay, Zombie Wolf. I think it was drifting that way. I was waiting to see how far it would go, but I think that's one of those topics that nobody's agreeing on. And therefore people just get very frustrated with each other. Exploration. And obviously it's a really sensitive topic in general. Instead, how about you guys tell me what kind of tea I should have next week? Because I pretty much only have Earl Grey here. Not that I have a lot of money to be spending on tea, but... and I was thinking I needed some other flavor of tea. I did notice the face. Yeah, for the most part, I let you people be. You're adults. You find someone laying on the ground still alive, but what is with me finding these? I don't want to deal with people right now. It's too early in the game. The cat is making demands. You know, I wish Smudge would come here and then I could show him every stream, but he sleeps during my streams. He's way off in another room. It's a King of Diamonds. I'm trying to remember if there was anything special about face cards, but I don't think there is. I think there was another game I was looking at today. Is it gonna make me tangle with the Skydrop thing? Okay. It's a Skydrop. I didn't explain these. Witchery says chai. Now, you are correct. Chai is lovely. But here's the trouble with chai. I have a mild allergy, but enough of one, to ginger. And almost all chai has it. And so I can't really have chai tea. I do sometimes, though. I like chai tea with like a milk. It's a sky drop. Whether you've spotted one off in the distance and decided to pursue it, or it has begun to drop nearby, you may now refer to the monoliths and sky drop section to discover what your character may be able to find in it. Okay? Witchery says, oh, bother. I know. How lame am I? Tea recommendation. I like to mix apple, cinnamon, and harvest peach together. Oh, where would I find peach tea? It's more of an autumn palette, but it's quite nice. I would drink a peach tea. I love peach. Peach pie. Mwah. One of the great inventions of our society. Jumpstore says, I would suggest White Rose by Numi. Looking this up now. That's so specific. Rosebuds and white tea. How curious. I've never heard of such a tea. GS says prehistoric Amazon. Well, okay. In fairness to the game, I didn't really explain the whole thing. So that's not on the game. It's not so much prehistoric. It's sort of implied. I didn't read the ending of it, so I don't know the actual thing, but it's sort of implied that we might be in the future. Like after the destruction of the world. If it's like Horizon Zero Dawn, that's kind of what it is. They're doing a live action Moana? Nobody needs that. Nobody. They just did Moana. It was beautiful. And to be clear, it was beautiful because it's animated, because that movie without the animation is someone on a raft at sea, which is Waterworld, which was boring. Big Drew says peach tea is readily available in the States. That's right, it is. Because it's like that's like a southern thing, isn't it? I'm sure it's around here, but I don't see it often. Okay, so let's read. Monoliths and skydrops. Two of the strangest mysteries of the Titan are the three colossal floating monoliths and the skydrops. These monoliths are positioned in three different sections of the Titan. The Titan is like this dome we're in. I just sort of skipped over that. Each with a different colored beam that shoots up from a metallic platform and flows through it towards the sky. Witchery says the coconut section in a live-action movie, though. Like, I'm sure someone will enjoy it, but it won't be me. And I'm happy for the people that enjoy it, but I just don't think I don't see how that works. They've been there since Titan's creation, and the Aracon or whatever scholars have endlessly researched them, trying to understand what they are and what their purpose is. The skydrops are mysterious spheres that float down from the sky on an energy beam that contain helpful items such as supplies, equipment, and unique items. These spheres are made with a strange alien metal that dissolves after a certain period of time. I guess all metal does. Just depends on the time. Same type of metal that makes up the pod your character arrived on. I guess not all metals. There's things like gold and whatnot. These begin to appear around the same time that the race came into being and helped them survive and build. Lore, I'm not going to get into. Each time your character encounters one of these drops, they may roll a 1d6. Compare their results to the skydrop table and see if they received enhanced equipment. As a drop, they may roll on the enhanced equipment table to see what their equipment will be. The enhanced equipment is flawlessly crafted and is considered special, and there's a bunch of other stuff to it, but I'm not going to read it. Skydrop rewards. So we need to roll our d6. On a 1 to 3, we get 4 supplies, which means we could do some crafting. On a 4 to 5, we do items and supplies, plus 2, which is a bit different. And then on a 6, we get enhanced equipment, and then from there we roll again to discover if it's armor or weapon or whatever, and there's a whole tier system I didn't touch. But I rolled a 1, so we don't need to go into that. The 1 is a plus 4 in supplies, which is good, because I hope that means we can construct something. Because that might be a good way to end the stream, us constructing a shelter. The one thing about, like, mechanic heavy stuff like this is it does tend to be more of an RPG. And RPGs are not always about stories. They're about role-playing. So it can just be an adventure. Let me double check how the shelter works and see if we have enough to make a shelter. And if we do, then that is how we will spend our own. Okay. Crafting. 4 different tiers of items. Items are considered tier 0. They have no requirements to be able to create, and all of them cost 2 supplies each. These items can only be used once before they have to create another. Generally helpful items such as medicine, taming supplies, and combat items. But how do I build shelter? Does it not tell me? It's got to tell me how to build shelter. Come on. says building a shelter might be one of the first things on your character's mind. Building a shelter costs 6 supplies. Oh, okay, well, we got to do a little more searching. Or, you know, I could just fudge it because we don't have all the time in the world. So let's do that. We're complaining about Disney again. We do have our cycles, don't we? Tammy says, my daughter hates Disney with a passion. But I'm from a generation of great Disney movies. I think there's still great Disney movies. I think some of the hate for Disney... I think hate for Disney crosses over into the movies a bit unfairly. It's going to be a 5th Toy Story? No, I wasn't really sure why there was a 4th. I mean, I guess money, but like... I don't know what they're going to do with it. Uncle Kitty says, am I alone in not watching many Disney films? No, I think there's lots of people, I think, that don't watch Disney films. I hiked over a few ridges, hunkering down in the thick underbrush when larger beasts, taller than the trees, rumbled through until I came to a high cliff that oversaw the river's wide valley. Hanging above it, with no discernible support, was a mammoth. No, I can't say mammoth because there could be mammoths. Was a massive tower of impeccable steel without seam or rust marring its mirrored surface. And the Steelers of the public domain. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I dislike the politics around Disney, but at the end of the day, as a creator of art, I don't have that many complaints. But, you know, to each their own. I mean, we're not discussing objective things. I do not believe in a hierarchy of art. I am distrustful of that concept. And if you find yourself thinking, but surely there are some objectively good and bad things about art, I would encourage you to watch a seemingly unrelated video, but I think it touches on the concept well, called Who's Afraid of Modern Art by Jacob Geller, which is on YouTube. It's about 30 minutes long, and it is fantastic summary about where the roots of hierarchy of art come from. A collective brain of if you folks are talking anime, see if you can help me remember the name of a show. About 4 years ago, probably a little longer, I think it was on Netflix, I watched this show that was about a guy. It wasn't very anime in the sense that it wasn't very high energy or anything. It was very sort of contemplative. Was an anime about a guy in sort of rural medievalish Japan wandering around dealing with, I believe, ghosts of people. It's not a horror. It's more existential. It was very pretty and peaceful. I cannot remember the name of it. I watched a season of it and then forgot about it for a long time. And then I was like, I should watch the other season. And I can't remember what it's called. With a massive tower of impeccable steel formed without seam or rust marring its mirror surface. It was as awesome as it was bewildering. My neck was craned up when I saw a beam of violet shine down and in the embrace of that light, a sphere floated to the valley floor. I ran, scrambled down from the cliff, catching wrists and ankles, and thorns and vines. Until I reached this gift from the monolith. It had no hatch, nor Witchery says, my sister is paying me for me and her to go on a Disney cruise next year. I don't know if I could ever go on a cruise again after COVID. I think it really revealed the seams on the stick you in a box with strangers thing. I do hope you have fun, though. Nobody knows the anime, eh? Yeah, that's a bummer. It was all in Japanese when I was watching it, which is my preference. Who's my dub life, fellows? Witcher says it wasn't my idea. It's not necessarily a bad idea. Sounds fun. Until I reached this gift from the monolith. It had no hatch nor panel to control it. Instead, the moisture of the heavy jungle air ate holes through the shell before my very eyes. Oh, I forgot about the damn pet. I don't know if I could fit it in. That's a shame. Way to go, Rory. I don't think I've ever actually forgotten suggestions before. If anyone ever feels bad for being like, Rory, you forgot this, don't. Because My memory's gonna fail you. It's a very, like, I don't, for me, anime is just another form of animation that some I like, some I don't. But the one thing I can't get behind is like, well, there's, 6,400 episodes, but, you can skip the first 200 and then it really gets good. And like, I don't want to skip story stuff ever. I'm either in a story or I'm not. And I don't want to watch 6,400 episodes. And 6,400 episodes sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. Which is the reason why, for example, like I didn't get into, well, I mean, Naruto comes to mind, but like, the one that we were discussing earlier, is it Mushishi, Rory? Let's find out. Let's look that up, see if the art looks right. No, this is older, I believe. Maybe. I mean, it sure sounds like it. It doesn't it, but the art doesn't look right. Did they remake it? One Piece, thank you. Because One Piece as a concept interested me. It's a little loud for me, but some of the stuff I saw. It might be actually Uncle Kitty. Maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. I'll take a look at it. But yeah, the problem with One Piece is like, isn't there like 1,000 episodes or something? Like, I'm just not going to do that. And I don't want to do, I know what you're going to say, because they all say it. You don't have to watch this season or that. I just don't want to do that. I don't want to be in the outside of something or half in. Yeah, there's more than one series, yeah. I see that on the Wikipedia. Maybe that's it. Mushishi certainly sounds like, in its description here, like the right thing. I'll take a look at it. I'll tell you next week. Moisture of the heavy jungle air ate holes through the shell before my very eyes. Before my eyes? Why do I say very? Inside were pristine building supplies. A few tools. Some fasteners. And a saw. No, that's going to be in tools. Yeah, Jumpstore says, Tammy, it has over 1,000 episodes. Yeah, that's what I remember, yeah. What animes have I watched? I watched and surprisingly liked, it's something Gentleman's Club or high school. It's like a high school escort club of boys. It's not escort in the euphemistic sense. Like, they're literally just handsome guys that hang out for money. That was a surprisingly good show. I can't remember the name of it, but I'm sure chat will like light up with it if they're anime fans, because it's a rather famous series. And then my partner's gonna kill me for forgetting this, but there's one about a kind of I can't describe it without spoiling it. About a girl who's sort of a robot and then becomes a real girl. This is a terrible description of it. Yeah, I think Witchery, what you're seeing there is like the equivalent, very often it's the equivalent of like Scooby-Doo in the 70s. Like it's sort of pumped out, but there's a good variety. I mean, there's some pretty nice anime stuff. I mean, the obvious one is Miyazaki. Like, Izaki's incredible. Uran High School Host Club. Thank you. There it is. It was Uran High School Host Club who got me to read Osamu Dazai's Human No Longer or something like that. I forget what it's called. It's one of the books I have up here, which is it's a very existentialist, moody, bleak kind of piece, but it has a really beautiful haiku style to it. Jumpstore says, I did not like that anime. You don't have to. Witcher says, I watch Ghibli movies. I watch Ghibli movies. I love Ghibli movies. A few tools, some fasteners, and supports for a shelter. Well, let's say wood. I think overall, though, I tend to enjoy I don't know, I just tend to enjoy quieter things, and I find that some of the Disney stuff is just too loud and boisterous for me. A few tools, some fasteners, and wood for a simple shelter. Uncle Kitty says, no Bubblegum Crisis fans here. I'm afraid I don't know Bubblegum Crisis. Do I have to roll anything, or do I just use the supplies? No, okay. Camp resting is what you'll be doing if you have not. We did build a shelter. Shelter resting is what you'll be doing if you built a shelter. Decide that that is where your character will be resting. You may recover all of their HP, but it will cost 2 action points. Well, we have 2 action points left. The sun was getting low by the time I drove the last nail into my low and small shelter. A good wind would disassemble it. So I nestled it up under the cliff. And near the base of the strange floating monolith. Uncle Kitty says it's inspired by Blade Runner, Rory. I mean, a few anime are for sure as well. I have a drawing, a very beautiful rendition of Akira, on his bike, driving, but I never put it up in the background, because it is a vertical one, and there's nowhere for me to put it here that wouldn't be cut off, but it is lovely. Okay, so I nestled up in the cliff near the base of the strange floating monolith. And it has an 80s hard rock soundtrack. Sounds fun. I mean, I'm a person who enjoyed the original heavy metal. It's trashy and at times indefensible as it was. Gia says, and the ones with the kids in an institution trying to escape. I don't think I know that one specifically. I know that that's a concept that comes up a lot. A good wind would disassemble it, so I nestled up under the cliff and near the base of the strange floating monolith. I was terrified by the size of the monsters here. Bewildered by my own face and body. Paranoid about who else was here to carve a home in a tree. I do like the cyberpunk anime in general, I will say that. Although it's surprisingly hard to find a lot of it. I've watched, the one that I watched recently was, I'm so bad with names, my god. The sort of iconic street racing one about mountain drifting in Japan. Because I like cars. It never comes up here, because I'm pretty sure that's not the part of me that this audience cares about, but I do really like cars. So it's enjoyable for me to see these sort of underdog classics that were modified up rather iconically in the late 90s for drifting up the winding mountain roads. Paranoid. I will say the animation in that outside of the cars, Jumpstore says the promised Neverland. Oh, cool. Ultimately, though, I was tired, and so sleep took me, despite my unrelenting thoughts. End day one. All right. Well, we got through some things here. Didn't find as many opportunities to involve you guys, but I think that's partially because there's a lot of setup to be done. Jumpstore says a lot of people didn't like the anime because apparently it deviated a bit from the manga. I know that's a popular line of thought, and I don't know in which ways it deviated. But I will say, people shouldn't go into adaptations expecting it to be similar. The point of an adaptation is it's a different medium, so like, are they angry that they've removed it for like bad reasons, or is it just that it's different? All right, let's see what we came up with. Witchery says it's an interesting premise of a game. Yeah, I think I wanted to show a little more of its mechanics because it has a lot of mechanics here. I think it's one I would come back to. Yeah, which I agree. Like, I mean, that I know I've made this point before, but it's the one that comes to mind. You know, people complain about Tom Bombadil being taken out of the Lord of the Rings movies. And, like, it made me sad, too. You know, he's an interesting and iconic character, and he has these, you know, he establishes a bunch of aspects about the world that matter in the end to those who care to read into it. But at the end of the day, it's a movie, and a movie lives on its momentum, right? Books have more room to breathe and linger. Movies don't. So, like, if they're making a movie, they're making it for a broader audience. And that audience doesn't want to watch a random little man singing songs for 25 minutes. Only the hardcore fans care about that. It's not good movie material. It's fun for a book. It's fun for stories. Uncle Kitty says definitely need a sequel for this one. Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think there's a lot more we could do with it. I feel like we're just sort of scratching the bottom of it. Witcher says lack of talking fox, 0 stars. When we I don't know, I'll sort of try and figure it out. I mean, obviously the one thing I will say is, like, I spent the first year doing a new game every week, and then this year you've noticed I've repeated some of those games from last year. I think that's an inevitable cycle because there are a lot of games. A lot of them do not work for this stream, so as a result, there's a more limited supply, so we do have to cycle through. Yeah, I agree with that as well, Jump Store. I mean, that can be said of anything. Like, the thing that, you know, happens that I think we've kind of figured out by now is that you can't, like, how do I put this? I'm going to read the story back, but for some reason this feels very important for me to articulate. It's like, you know, in video game adaptations, if you're too faithful to the source material, it kind of doesn't work, because video games can get away with a lot of weirdness that just doesn't work in a movie or a book or whatever else. It kind of breaks immersion in those settings, but we sort of accept it in games. It works in games. Structurally, they just have different goals, and the problem with that is that if you don't have the mechanics, a lot of things are a lot less meaningful to you if you're watching it in a movie, things like that. But what I was going to say is, fundamentally, every medium has its strengths and its weaknesses. And that means that if you're going to adapt to something, stuff that worked in one has to be lost if it doesn't work in another, or you can commit to it, and so on. So my question, I guess, is what I'm saying is, it doesn't really matter that every scene is done the same, or that every scene from a thing is in another thing. What matters most of all is whether they harness the same spirit, to me. And even that probably doesn't matter that much, but to me. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, if you're going to make a movie, you know, like, for example, if they decided to make The Last of Us TV series, which was a video game, if you guys don't know, that they've made into an HBO series, I think it's HBO. You know, that's a game that already was kind of an HBO series, but in its formatting. But if they somehow turned that game into, like, a feel-good comedy, then you could say this is a bad adaptation because it sort of misses what was special about the game. But people who complain that it, like, changed scenes or stuff like that, they can go away. You know, go play the game if you're that obsessed, if that was your perfection. Wow, I've spent a long time, and my partner is going to need a ride soon. So let me read this back. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's because you just want to know the story we came up with. And the story we came up with was with the game Titan Mesozoic. And it is a game that we just sort of scratched the surface of. It has a lot of mechanics to it. It is very Horizon Zero Dawn-ish, Ark survival. It's about a mysterious world with floating high technology and aliens on the... Well, we're the alien, really, on a planet. And dinosaurs and so on. We didn't encounter any dinosaurs, unfortunately, in our playthrough here, but I think we will come back to it. Our character we came up with using the rolling charts and so on is Astera. She has multicolored eyes. One is silver and one is pink to gold. A scar across her back, which we didn't really get to. Was apparently extroverted, instinctive, and formal, but we didn't really have a chance for her to interact, so most of this didn't come up. But our landing location was suspended from tree branches. So I'm going to read you back what we came up with, and the way we came up with this stuff was a mixture of the chat, Using the systems in the game, which requires us to pull random cards and roll dice on those cards, depending on the system we were doing. And we went through basically a day of the game. It was the shudder of my pod. Wait, let me get more appropriate music here. It was the shudder of my pod striking something and swinging back and forth that finally woke me. My fingers were still numb and cold to the touch, almost stiff. The interior of this pod was drenched in dew like a thawing cave of ice. I blinked, then saw my face in the foggy window of this metallic pod. My face was slender and soft features. My lips were a bit thin. My eyes were strange colors that I do not recall seeing on others. One was a soft silver that feathered to blue at the edges. The other was a gold and pink iridescent as the setting sun. I was a stranger to this face, and even to my own thoughts. I was as a babe, yet somehow I knew much. I reached and opened the door onto an overwhelming world of wild noises. The pod was stuck. I guess I should say something on those noises of chattering birds and roaring animals and rushing water. I found that my pod was stuck on a high branch over a frothing white river in a land of endless green under endless blue. The air was thick with pollen and mist, but had none of the metallic taste I remembered in it. It tasted clean. The riverbed was beset by a herd of feathered bipeds with stout arms tucked against their bodies and long tails behind them. They snapped at the water with their elongated jaws and carved up flopping fish with their jagged rows of teeth. I realized these were the feathered dinosaurs I thought long extinct. The land writhed and rustled with life like this. Where was I? Nowhere I could recognize. I crawled down the tree from where my pod had crashed and found the base of it hollowed out, seemingly by hand tools. It was wide enough that it could make a decent shelter, but it had been occupied, that much was clear. Inside, the ground was dirt, yet smooth and polished by the many passes of someone's small feet. Cobwebs were strung between the hand-tooled walls and a pile of paraphernalia in the corner. No one could have been here for at least a month for it to collect cobwebs like that. I saw amongst the items a tincture of a healing balm. Now I had trepidation at thieving from an unknown abode, but my own needs overrode that. I had nothing in this wild and dangerous new world, but now I had medicine. I hiked over a few ridges from there, hunkering down in the thick underbrush, holding my breath when larger beasts, taller than the trees, rumbled on through. Finally, I came to a high cliff that oversaw the river's wide valley. Hanging above it with no discernible supports was a massive tower of impeccable steel, formed without seam nor rust marring its mirrored surface. It was as awesome as it was bewildering. My neck was craned up when I saw it open, and a beam of violet light shone down, and in the embrace of that light, a sphere floated to the valley floor. I scrambled down from the cliff, catching wrists and ankles on thorns and vines, until I reached this gift from the monolith. It had no hatch nor panel to control it. Instead, the moisture of the heavy jungle air ate holes through the shell before my eyes. Inside were pristine building supplies, a few tools, some fasteners, and wood for a simple shelter. The sun was getting low by the time I drove the last nail into my low and small shelter built from those supplies. A good wind would disassemble it. I was no builder. But I nestled it up under the cliff, out of the weather and the wind, and near the base, still within sight of the floating monolith. Obviously, a floating monolith doesn't have a base. I was terrified by the size of the monsters here. I could hear them rumble in the night, bewildered by my own face and body that I caught in reflections of puddles, paranoid about who else was here to carve a home in a tree. Ultimately, though, I was tired, and so sleep took me despite my unrelenting thoughts. Big Drew says, the main character next week, regardless of theme or subject, is Banana Strawberry Fuzzlebum. Fuzzlebum is a good word. I didn't get a chance to really see your story, Big Drew, and I think I'm not going to be able to read it back. I will read it on my own time, but I can't read it on the stream. I hope you had fun writing it, though. Zombie Wolf says, random trivia. Superman was created in 1938 by two Jewish men who wanted to create a force powerful enough to eliminate the evils of the world, but stay uncorruptible due to being inherently good. Also, Superman's name, Clark Kent, was inspired by the Hollywood actors Clark Gable and Kent Taylor. Oh, I didn't know that. Also, the women they got to model for Lois Lane, Joanne Carter, married Superman's co-creator Jerry Siegel. I figured since Rory brought up Superman, I would make tonight's trivia about Superman. Yes. Lovely. Good facts tonight. Witchery says, thanks for the stream, Rory. Thanks for the company, Witchery. Tammy Morelli says, have a wonderful evening, all. Hope you have a great weekend. Thank you for the good time tonight, Rory. I had a fun time with everyone. Sweet dreams. I hope your arm feels better. Or shoulder, I suppose. Yeah, we will circle back to this. I was thinking of doing next week. I mean, I always kind of look at my options. But I was thinking of doing next week, circling back to the one that's based on Annihilation. The one that sent me, actually, the physical copies of the game. I don't know if people remember that, but the problem I remembered, so don't get your hopes up, is this laptop can't run the drawing program and stream. It just doesn't have the RAM for it. And that game was about creating fantasy plants, while also turning into a plant, which was a shame because I wanted to go back to that one. But at some point I will have carved up enough cash, I'm sure, that I can get a better laptop or a better computer in general, and we can get back to the drawing ones as well. So I don't know what we're doing next week. But thank you everybody for hanging out with me. I really appreciate the company as always, and thank you for watching. Thank you to Big Drew, Witchery, Tammy, Uncle Kitty, Zombie Wolf, GS, and Jump Store. And anybody else who's out there lingering or I may have forgotten. Janera, I know you were here for a little bit. Witchery says, can you draw? It's more just... It's just my... What I'm doing right now is the max it can do. Is what it is. Anyways. You don't have to actually go home, though you probably already are. But you can't stay here. Get out of my shop.